Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
Bill, I think there's some people that are probably listening to this podcast that I hope are starting a new organization called Friends of Neville Chamberlain, because some of the things I've heard from some of the people that we know and people that we and that people that are listening to this podcast that they have friends, family, I'm sure, that think the same things, that this is really a disturbing moment in the country with what we saw. By the way, this is Saturday. So yesterday we saw just something in the Oval Office that will not be unseen. It will not be washed from the memories. There's no eternal sunshine of what was that movie where you could...
The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Spotless Mind. Well, Spotless Mind, spotless. There's one of the minds in that room was spotless because there's nothing in it.
Right.
But that was what we saw on display with the way the president and the vice president treated President Zelinski. This will go down in history as an epic moment that shifted the culture.
Well, and it, you mentioned Neville Chamberlain. It has that kind of quality to it, right? Where a leader will become infamously known for selling out on other people that we don't know what the ramifications are.
Bill, Putin just needs breathing room.
Yeah. What I would say is in 1938, when Neville Chamberlain landed and gave that speech, by the way, William Buckley was there as a young man. And he writes about that, right? But in 1938, there were 15 to 20 million people who were alive that will not be alive in 1945. And by the way, over 25% of those are German people who will die in part because of what Neville Chamberlain did or didn't do. And at least Neville Chamberlain, and again, at least he was somebody in his inner circle. They were doing all they could do to avoid World War I in their minds because they had seen the devastation. Some of people had fought and commanded and sent hundreds of thousands of people to their death. So it wasn't that they didn't know what war was, which neither I would, I'm not sure exactly what Vance's job was in the military. I have seen
he was a PR officer.
I've seen many Marines disavow him today, but regardless, we know Trump had serious case of bone spurs and could not serve his country in Vietnam. And he also had the bowling team that was dependent on him. And anyway, but I think this is that kind of moment without at least Chamberlain had noble motives
and been to war.
This is purely, well, what is it? What's the word? What is this? This is purely, I mean, evil is a cliche. How many times can we use it? But I would say, first of all, it felt like a setup, right? Felt like Zelinski was set up for this.
Of course he was set up for this. Of course, because look, Trump is not a spotlight sharing guy. He's not a guy that's telling Vance, okay, we're gonna help your career for the next election. Come on, you make a contribution. I'm invested. He's there to be a prop, right? That's the only reason Trump shares the spotlight, right? For props, and he is there as a prop. That was staged. I mean, come on.
He reminds me. He reminds me of the junior who has a secondary role in the class play. It's a high school drama, and he's rehearsed his line again and again. Just say thank you. Just say thank you. And he once he gets to that part of the script, he is a little bit too over prepared, we could say.
By the way, and then Vance, this is, by the way, you've never thanked the United States, sir.
Oh my gosh.
The guy thanks the United States every time he opens his mouth.
Every
the past
day.
3 years.
Every day he thanks the United States. Right. Yeah. Now, I mean, again, and I'm glad we have this. I'm glad we have the Tower of a Man that we have as Secretary of State as well. Because
Little Marco.
there is another profile in courage there. But
don't you just wish Trump would just for the theater of it that he would call him Little Marco in the Oval?
I would. You have to think maybe it's behind closed doors. He acts as if it's a term of endearment. It's just one other way to say I've got you, man.
Do you remember when Trump when he was telling Ted Cruz lying Ted? He would say, he goes into that church with that Bible, then he walks out and he lies. And then the minute Cruz bent the knee, right? They were, are you still calling him lying Ted? He said, no, I'm calling him beautiful Ted. Texas Ted.
So you mentioned when we were talking about this yesterday, this is this generation's Watergate moment, and this is only what.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, we weren't that. It was still February yesterday. We're not even into month.
By the way, again, to call it Watergate to me is not to diminish the memory of Richard Nixon, our last great liberal president. The EPA, affirmative action, wanted to end local school zoning, school funding. Nixon, let's not even put Trump in defame Nixon's good name.
Right. I mean, a man who did order secret bombing of Cambodia would never have done this to any of our allies. And he ordered a
secret bombing of Walter Cronkite's boat.
Yeah, nor would he have done this publicly to an enemy.
No. So, Laura, let me just, before we get into the meat of the show here, I just want to read you a quote from one of your favorite presidents, Ronald Reagan. This is June 6, 1984, celebrating the anniversary of D-Day. Right, June 6th, right? The men of Normandy had faith that what they were doing was right. Faith that they fought for all humanity. Faith that a just God would grant them mercy on this beachhead or on the next. It was the deep knowledge, and pray God we have not lost it, that there is a profound moral difference between the use of force for liberation and the use of force for conquest. The strength of America's allies is vital to the United States, and the American security guarantee is essential to the continued freedom of Europe's democracies. We were with you then. We are with you now. Your hopes are our hopes, and your destiny is our destiny. Well, that's over, I guess.
Yeah, no, that is over. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I sent you an article. I'm sure we'll talk about exactly how do you categorize what exactly is going on here, and that authoritarianism is maybe not. This can lead to authoritarianism, but it's more. And you've mentioned already. It's more like what's a patrimonial, or what's that word the guy uses? The kind of where it's the man is the country. So family interest. It's inherently corrupt because you're putting your interest are the country's interest, and you don't want expertise. You really don't want bureaucracy. You know, one of the things that a true authoritarian government needs a democracy. Stalin needed his democracy. You think of the secrets. You think of the dictatorships in Argentina and Chile. They had a well-oiled bureaucracy of terror. This approach is basically get all your cronies and incompetent people in it, so that there isn't really any opposing force to you. What you are, and
we've talked about this a few episodes ago, but their political fortunes rise and fall with you. It's not, it's not like somebody like Chris Wray, who wouldn't, was appointed by Trump, but wouldn't bend the knee in that sense because he had an established career in public life and had relationships that meant things to him, right? That even Jeff Sessions. I mean, even Jeff Sessions said, this is a bridge too far, because Sessions had a career in public life, was a senator, had, he didn't want to just cash everything in like Giuliani did and have the fealty. So, I mean, I think what tends to happen here is that you get these people like Kennedy, right? I mean, Kennedy could not. I mean, who would appoint Kennedy really, or Patel, or a lot of these guys, or Hess Guthrie? There, I mean, so if they buck the leader, then their political futures and fortune is over, right? So incompetence serves a calculated purpose here, right? It's not just I'm a good time Charlie and I like good time Charlie. There's a strategic end to the incompetence, because it develops the client nature of the bureaucracy.
Right. And it can become a totalitarian. I mean, you kind of look at Turkey, really is, still has elections. India still has elections, but this is what it looks like. I mean, obviously Russia's a little bit different because it doesn't start out as a democracy, right? But one of the things that you and I are there's a lot of things that we're disturbed about right now, but Christians who are defending yesterday.
Some who listen to the show, some who watch us live. This is. I don't have words for it. I mean, this is. No, look, I'll acknowledge. I mean, if you want to talk about a future where the United States can't police the world, that we're entering into a world where our strategic alliances might have to be shared, there might have to be more burden sharing, both for questions of resources and questions of just the American political will. I think that misadventures in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, certainly much more Iraq than Afghanistan, have made the path clear for someone like Trump, right? I mean, the isolationism of Trump has been, but this is not that. I mean,
no, this is not that. Yeah, and yeah, right, exactly. And I'm with you. I mean, first of all, I don't think we've ever had the moral purity in the first place to act as the international policeman, because it's been very uneven, right? It's almost always been when there's been an ulterior motive. We take the moral high ground when Middle Eastern oil might be at stake, right? Things like that. But yeah, it is. This is very different. This is, again, one of our listeners last year accused us both of hating America, and what you saw in the White House yesterday was the end of at least a chapter of an America that was worth loving, right?
Andrew Sullivan says in a Substack piece, he said, he's speaking of the phrase free world, the free world. Those three words, the free world, mean nothing to Trump and never have. And he has now faithfully told the entire world, including our former allies, that this is America's position now as well. He has updated Reagan with these words: "We were with you then. We see no reason to be with you now. In fact, we're siding with the dictator who threatens you."
Right.
That's where we're at, and
bringing the Saudis in as a part of the negotiating party. That it's all about his personal advantage and people who he thinks like him. And again, what the whole Putin thing, I don't even care to speculate why it's about. Part of us thinks, like, if Putin had something on him, right, or there was a financial deal, that at least there would be some utility to him.
Right.
But there might be something even more disturbing than that. He might actually just like him.
Well, this goes back to what we talked about yesterday, the last episode, with the mafia,
right,
metaphor, which a couple of folks have said, this is really apt, and it is. It in that you have a sneaking admiration. You kind of have this understanding that that's your turf, this is my turf. You're not going to come over to my turf. I'm not going to come over to your turf, and I'll abuse my lackeys under me, but I'll show a real respect to rival dons. And this is. I mean, but it's interesting. The title of this episode we have was Christian Realism or Pagan Cynicism. And a friend of mine, a clergy person, said, he quoted realism and saying that you need to be a realist. Now, this is such a bastardization of Reinhold Niebuhr, who we could be critical of certain parts of Reinhold Niebuhr. I'm fine about that. But Reinhold Niebuhr's Christian realism was a movement that came out of his disillusionment with the pacifism, with the early 20th century sort of post World War I pacifism. The pacifism that he had, that was destroyed by the experience of a world at war.
By the way, can I just put context? Okay, Trump has pictures with Paula White and Gary Falwell Jr. Reinhold Niebuhr had pictures with FDR.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit. Yeah.
It's almost the same. It's almost the same.
Almost the same. Right.
You know what? I saw a video of Paula White's church. I was so underwhelmed with the building and the parking lot. And I thought, for prosperity, if you're a prosperity preacher, you got to have a better parking lot. I mean, I don't even think
and for those of you who are careful listeners, realize that once again, Scott has revisited the parking lot, because it sounds like it really it
struck me.
It triggered you. You're wounded.
It did. The hypocrisy of saying you're a prosperity person and your parking lot is that shitty. I mean, you really need to reevaluate. So Niebuhr is saying, look, we can have the inspiration of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount. We can have the radical love ethic, but the way this plays out in a sin-soaked world is his realism, right? Is that in a world full of sin and injustice, we all kind of have dirty hands. So he's like he thinks a naive pacifism or a kind of optimistic idealism that doesn't take into account human sin, depravity, and the complexities of the world is not going to serve the church well, the world well, or anyone well. So look, there's a lot to commend in Niebuhr's realism, and it's a serious discussion, a serious contribution to 20th century ethical and theological thought. And people like Hauerwas and Yoder, learning from Barth, have engaged this stuff, and we could have a productive dialogue. But this is what people are saying here. This is not Christian realism. This is pagan cynicism. This is, hey, this guy's got interests. He's got a big gang. Okay, we got our big gang over here. We're not getting hurt. So somebody's got. And look, this is I posted on Facebook and Twitter yesterday, which I don't do a lot of this kind of stuff, sloganeering. But so what strikes me is that when Trump talks about making peace, we're going to make peace. They're going to make peace. He sounds like he's breaking up a bar fight with two drunk, deranged guys, and not a home invasion, right? Like when there's a home invasion, you don't say, well, okay, get out of the guy's home, but you could take the TV. You take the espresso machine, you can make out with his wife, and then you go. I mean, this is a great deal. You still have your home, right? You still have a lot of stuff, and your home's you've got a great home now. I mean, it's so deranged. And the idea that people would say that somehow this is a sort of Augustinian, Calvinistic, chastened, realistic view of the world is disgusting. Right. And it's not. This is just, if you want to say, there's a great book that came out years ago. A friend of mine recommended to me. He recommended it critically to understand how the world works. It's called "Why Leadership Demands a Pagan Ethos," and basically, it's a book. It's the anti-Holland book, right? Dominion. Right. It's basically saying, Christianity did a lot with love and peace and civilizing. And that screwed up the world. And you want to really get things going again. A little bit of paganism, some blood and some soil and some macho, Roman regalia. A little homoeroticism after the games. This is what really fixes the game. And so if people want to say, hey, look, we're rejecting Christian realism, rejecting a Augustinian approach of looking at public life and the theater of history, and we just want to get shit done in a self-interested base way that really looks at world relations as a zero-sum game, and if somebody gets something, we lose. And then by all means do that, but don't call it Christian, don't call it realism, and don't call me and tell me then that I somehow have it wrong. All right.
Yeah, no, I think it's absolute. Matter of fact, talk about Greco-Roman eroticism. His theme song YMCA.
YMCA. Right. This is it. The paganism down to the homoeroticism. Right. Why? And you see the way he shimmies. Right. Right. He shimmies. He shimmies back and forth. Right.
No, it is.
I'll say I would not go into the steam bath at Mar-a-Lago, dude. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, not that there's anything wrong, but no, it's yeah. Well, almost hypermasculinity always has that as a. I mean, why are they so afraid of transgendered people? What's that about? I mean, what? I mean, anyway, regardless. So yeah, I think I think it's helpful to call it what it is, right? Now, you can support it, right? I mean, obviously 50.5% of the voting public did, right? But your mom's Social Security check might be a little late. God forbid if any of your family's on Medicaid, okay, you might be having trouble getting workers for your fields forever now. Right?
Just for our listeners that say we never say anything good about this administration, he did pardon Pete Rose. Right. Okay, Charlie Hustle. I would like to see Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, and if this goes towards for our listeners to say we're unfair, I will gladly say, although this man basically is destroying what we think of as again, as Andrew Sullivan said, the free world. He might help get Charlie Hustle in the Hall of Fame.
I didn't like Pete Rose as a player, as a human being, and I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, let's face it. If Ty Cobb is in the Hall of Fame, you know, they're a pretty low bar. And while you're at it,
and he never bet against the Reds. He never bet against the Reds.
Right. Never bet against himself. There we go. No. So yeah, I'm right there. And also for some reason, he's he has a soft spot for human traffickers as well. Apparently they're getting pardoned now too. So don't lie about this being Christian. Don't lie to yourself. That's the thing about it. You don't have to like our politics. You don't have to agree with us theologically. Okay. But this violates everything I learned at Mark Wood Methodist Sunday School by good, simple Bible believing people. Okay.
They were putting up maps of Europe in there. What are you doing?
Not so much.
This is advanced Sunday school.
Oh no, but
no, yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah,
don't wrap it up. I mean, don't say that somehow this is it all. Yeah. You know, and the other thing that I find so interesting and ironic is these so-called, you know, the Patriots and MAGA, and you know, sort of like we got to look back and it, sort of with a sacred view of our history and all this stuff. Would they have said to the founding fathers, come on? I mean, look, what are they going to say to the founding fathers? Look, okay, Britain's too big, okay? You're going to screw up the colonies, okay? Look, you got no cards to play, okay? King George, he's got all the cards, okay? You got to make a deal, all right? You got to pay more for your stamps. You got to let the British impound your rights, okay? All right, self-evident, all right? I don't see self-evident. I see no cards. That's what I say. I see King George. I mean, what would we be against all odds? At that time, the greatest military fighting force the world had ever seen, and we beat them.
And the only reason we did, ultimately, is because the French backed us.
This is true. And Washington learned that just keep the army moving,
keep running away.
Keep running.
Don't lose.
Sometimes retreat is the better part of valor.
Yeah.
But no, and so it's just interesting that part of, you know, really the first Enlightenment revolution, right? The first in the West, you know, the first people to say, hey, look, we're going to have a revolution based on self-government, and we will go against insurmountable odds, and we won't quit. These people say, you know, quit, throw in the towel.
Well, I did talk. Somebody I'm surprised that one of my libertarian friends is okay with everything that's going on. He goes, it warms my Jeffersonian heart. I go, well, wait. I think sometime in the next couple of weeks they're going to try to bring slavery back, and so that should even warm your Jeffersonian heart even more. Yeah, very, very. That warm your Jeffersonian heart, maybe your Jeffersonian bed.
Yeah,
well.
and
You
of
know,
course Jefferson saying to Adams late in his life, "Yeah, I guess maybe I did get the French Revolution thing wrong."
oh my gosh. Well, you know what? One of the things my kids may think I was over dramatic, but I sent my family a little text today, and I just said, what I grieve is that your children may have to very well fight for things that I never thought they would have to fight for. Um, but we have to say what's wrong is wrong, and we have as Christians have to care for people who are harmed and who are going to be harmed by all this. But more importantly, just don't lie to yourself. Look, history is full of Christians who thought that if I tie my allegiance to this particular leader, I'm going to help the kingdom come. I'm going to help God along with his plan. And history is littered, even with Christians that are worth listening to and following. Even people like Bernard Clairvaux, Francis of Assisi, others were deep and knew they were wrong, admitted they were wrong afterwards, by thinking that that this kind of violent power, and also this kind of self-centered opportunism is somehow Christian, and it boggles the mind, and it troubles the soul. So, I mean, I do pray for my fellow Christians who are so wrong about this, and I pray for the people of the Ukraine who like many peoples over the last 200 years, were inspired by the idea of America, and they're not the first, or will they be the last people that were let down?
Yeah, the citizen
by the hypocrisy of us all.
It's interesting because these now, of course, there's which cynically, Vance and Trump brought up, but there is a shortage of manpower, and you have citizen soldiers, you have farmers and teachers and computer programmers standing up to the Russian army, right? This is reminiscent of the 18th century, right? When you just had citizen soldiers who, non-professional army. I mean, this is what Washington was struggling with, right?
Who are the people that stormed Normandy?
Yeah.
They were not professional soldiers. Yeah. I mean, I buried people that have scrap metal who died of wounds that they received in Italy fighting against fascism. And part of me is thankful they're not here to see this.
Yeah, it's a sad day, but we are people of hope, right? And so I think, there's something resilient about the act of praying, of confessing faith.
Oh, I'm not worried. Together. I'm not worried about the kingdom of heaven.
No.
But I mourn.
No, because that's not dependent on a strategic alliance. We would be. If there was a strategic alliance involved, I'd be worried about the kingdom of heaven.
Like if all right, on Armageddon, we need America on the left flank. And Trump said, no, thank you, Lord. Yeah.
I mean, can't you just see Trump in the wilderness temptations? I mean, the kingdoms of the world. First off, what are these kingdoms even worth? Okay, there's a bunch of if half of the kingdoms are in Europe and they're losers. Okay, I mean, I'd say yes if you got me something good. Okay, all right. Yeah, so Bill, I don't know. It's a dark day. It's but again, we
it's what I one of my earliest memories is watching my mother weep at the funeral of JFK. I remember 1968 as an 8-year-old, my being I hate to use the word Trump, but images of Vietnam, MLK being killed, Bobby Kennedy being killed, people talking in low voices about the 19-year-old neighbor who came back in pieces in a box. Yeah. I remember Watergate. And these were things that in many ways shaped my political imagination. And in many ways also opened me up to say, I don't want that direction. I want to see if there's meaning found in following Christ and trying to do that kind of work. So I mean, this is the table's been set for some really challenging times in front of us, and also it's an ending of certainly not a chapter of American history that's without its problems and hypocrisies and wrongdoing, but we've always been hypocrites as a country. But the best of us didn't lie to us about those hypocrisies and struggled with them, right? But now we're not even trying anymore.
Bill, to close, I want to quote Karl Barth. To clasp the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world. So listeners, friends, confess your sins, lift up your hearts, and begin the uprising in the clasping of hands in prayer. Please join us. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you all for listening.
And the beat goes on.